like Donald Trump is shit and there's a clusterfuck from him, because if they had have done A, B, C, D, F, G differently and he had have made slightly different calls, it could have been an 8, 9 or a 10, whereas you're at a 7, with the difference being Donald Trump's incompetence. Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
That's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift. Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Hey, Roger.
Andy, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. How do you think they afforded to fly the Artemis 2 rocket with the cost of fuel at the moment?
I don't know. It's when I was reading the whatever the blurb was on NASA, though, they had a lot of pride in the diversity of the crew. I'm like, DEI is still alive in NASA, right? Like the first female to escape the Earth's orbit. Sorry, Sanchez or whoever, the Katy Perry went up on Bezos's thing. Whatever, what was that called again?
Blue orbit,
I want to say Blue Origin. Is it
Blue Horizon? I don't know.
Some kind of blue thing. But yeah, first female astronaut and first brown astronaut, a person of color. So there you go.
just to be fair, the so-called brown astronaut.
To be clear, that was not on the official NASA blurb. Okay,
but the least qualified person on this mission is actually like the white guy, so he's never been to space. So
funny how that happened.
Where the rest of them have. But yeah, it's. Do you reckon NASA's responsible for that blip in the fuel trading market? Like Donald Trump gave them like, hey, just like got to buy all your fuel, like just before I announce this Truth Social tweet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting to see, but I can only assume that when whatever that rocket fuel that they need is a very, very specific type of refinement that's not even really fuel as we know it.
Pretty sure it's just the
shell,
the premium, like ethanol, not the E10 stuff, but they just use the premium stuff, don't they?
Well, speaking of, okay, what's your mentality around the quality of petrol that you use?
Well, to be fair, I drive a 13-year-old Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, but it wasn't always 13 years old. So did you? Yeah, give it to me. Like, what's the theory here? You just
I've always just gone like standard. Like, I think it's a con. I think even if there is some benefit of like going premium, even if there is a benefit, it's almost certainly going to be overpriced for that benefit.
See, yeah, that's what I wanted you to admit, because I feel a little bit differently. So and I think it's because growing up I had that luxury sports car that physically required high octane. So you actually had to feed it 95 and above because it had a turbo engine and a bunch of other things. So I've just been programmed to think that actually I tend to always get I take the same approach as trying to find a bottle of wine at a restaurant. Give me your second cheapest bottle of wine, right? That's kind of how I approach it. I just think that the 95, and there are some tests actually, that the 95 compared to the 91, or the next best option, is gets you a little bit further as well. So it's actually you get actually a bit more out of the car. So
just to be clear, you're not talking about the premium one. You're talking about the basically just not E10, right? Clearly, you're not talking about whatever they've all got like their own different brands, but like the 98 kind of.
Yeah.
Or like the really high expensive one, right?
That's right. So in New South Wales, you've got three options, right? 91, 95, and 98. Usually. There's three kind of options. 98 super premium, and 91's the bargain basement, right? And it might be E10 with ethanol added, but it may not be. Right?
Well,
so I always get 95.
Yeah, well, sometimes the E10 and the the 95 is like they're virtually like not dissimilar price, right?
Mm.
In fact, I've even been like once and seen the E10 is more expensive. Which
really?
I assume it was some kind of
price of grain,
like sequencing error where they hadn't adjusted one, but they'd adjusted the other. But yeah, if it's 2 cents difference, then you wouldn't get E10, I suppose. But like, I wouldn't pay like 30 cents more for.
No, but it's never that. It's never 30 cents more.
Well, whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's
probably
kind of,
is now.
Well, actually, ironically, at my local petrol station, the only thing available in New South Wales is actually the 91. So that's all I've been able to find for the last 2 weeks.
All right, so let's check back in, because we talked about Iran some episodes ago, but probably quite a lot has happened in the meantime.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what the conversation we had back then was. It seems like an eternity ago.
Like many people, we got distracted by the Epstein files. So.
Oh, and just on that, you did see Pam Bondi is gone.
Well, I wouldn't say it's just the Epstein files that haven't landed so well with Pam Bondi, but anyway, or Pam Bondi for the Australians.
So, what's your take? How's it gone? How's this operation going for the US at the moment?
Yeah, like, I mean, all of these. How's it going? How's it going? Well, I mean, if you just look at the facts on the ground, I think that you can spin a case for it going very well for the interests of
Iran,
America, and Israel. So I'll kind of give it the pro case first. Very few.
So just to be clear, this is not your view. This is just I'm trying
to lay it out because, to be honest, the view is obscured at the moment, right, for many people, and myself included. So
why? Because of petrol prices.
Yeah, I've been huffing too much ethanol. But the pro case is that there's been hardly any, almost a rounding error of casualties on the American side. Okay, have their stated objectives of degrading Iran's military and all these kind of things have been pretty much achieved, right? So they have reduced their missile capacity. They've hit out a lot of their manufacturing base. They've decapitated probably 3 rounds of the Iranian leadership at the moment. And, they've done it. They've kind of destroyed the Navy. They've sunk so many boats, right? And ships and everything, and degraded a lot of the capacity of that. So yeah, in a way, right? Like in a military sense, it's been a success, and they've done that without, like I said, any casualties, and have largely protected the allies in the region of the Gulf states. So they have helped a lot and made sure that most of the missiles and ballistic kind of interference have been intercepted and dealt with. So from that side, it has been good, right? And we have to remember that Iran has shown the world exactly what it is throughout the course of the last couple of years, and also throughout the course of this war, attacking this, that, and everything around the Gulf, and how they've treated their own civilians and all this kind of stuff. So from that side, I think you could mount a case that's going very well. You
sound a little bit like JD Vance or Marco Rubio, as though if you utter those words that it can actually be true. Like
which parts?
Well, because none of that's true, right? Like what you just said, like has not been a success, right?
No, but from what I said though, around the military side, how is that not true?
But they haven't destroyed their capability to hold the global economy to ransom. So
that's not
or to threaten their neighboring.
No, that's not the stated goals.
States and countries, right? Well, I don't know quite what the stated goals are, because there seems to be a different one every time we hear from Mr. Butterstick over there. But, I think, what's the measure of success, right? The measure of success is not going into this, could not have been, we will be happy if we can get 1/3 of their missile capability destroyed, right? Like, that'll be a good success for us. Where it makes no material difference to their ability to threaten the things that matter to us, right? Maybe if you're Israel, the equation might be a little bit different, because they're, at the end of the day, like, for them, it's like existential, right? But if you're the United States and you're thinking, well, let's get into this thing, right? There's no way that you can't have a partial victory or an almost there, right? You need absolute, complete annihilation for this to have been a success. And they are so far away from that it almost defaults to absolute, complete and utter failure, right?
Well, do you have anything to back that up?
Well, have you been to the petrol station recently?
What does that have to do with
because that
the
is
military capability of Iran?
Because the reason we're in the situation we're in is because Iran retains the ability to have the noose around the rest of the world's neck, right? On this issue, right? And if you're Donald Trump right now, you can't be thinking this is a success. Like in terms of the military,
he
like
is.
probably in the way that he thinks his shit stinks beautifully, kind of thing. But like,
I think you're definitely undercooking this, mate. So all the things that I've read, and again, this is just one side of what success means, is true. So you said, "Oh, I'll be happy if there's a third." There's like credible sources that over 80% the ballistic missile capability has been degraded. Right, like that is actually a good thing. That's meeting.
Okay, but they don't have regime change. They don't have like
they didn't say that was part of their view, right? And
well, I've kind of heard that. Like, and the other thing is like, if you're Israel, maybe that matters. Okay, if you're Israel, maybe it matters what like the strength and power of this massive neighbor that basically thinks that your country shouldn't exist anymore. So maybe if you're Benjamin Netanyahu and you're considering this and you're considering like this question, it might be different. It might be a different conversation, right? But if you're the United States, how is it in your interests to have poked the bear in this way such that, like, we are literally fucked? Like, the global economy is fucked, basically. Of course we're fucked.
The USA is not fucked.
The global economy is fucked because of this. Yes.
There are adaptations happening, right? Like, if you think that it's going to be a wide-scale thing for an extended period of time, like that's just
20% of the world's oil and gas and all these other critical resources come through this part of the world, right? How can you possibly say that this is a success?
That's just one dimension, right? So that's what I'm saying. You need to look at this from all the different views.
Imagine I'm a voter in America. What do I get out of this? Why is this good for me?
Oh, it's very good for you because essentially you've got a country that is very oppositional towards you, shouting death to America over and over for the last God knows how many decades. You've got terror proxies causing problems all over the world and threatening you. You have 80 to 90% of oil being funded at discounted rates to one of your biggest competitors, being China. You know, so you've got a bunch of things happening. And the fact that if they get nuclear weapons, they can hold even more ransom and take up airtime for the geopolitics that your country's proposing, right? So there's a lot of things that benefit them. And
I'm not convinced by any of that. I'm just seeing the price of petrol at the bowser.
Well, then you're an idiot.
And you can say, oh, yeah, well, there's all these
You're a selfish idiot then.
Like, the only way this would have made sense, right, is if let's give Donald Trump his dues for Venezuela. It was a very clean operation. They got what they want. They got the man. They extracted him out. And in fact, that's probably what emboldened him to do this one, right? And that's the only way this could have been a success. Like, as in, go in, get the Ayatollah, regime change, like popular uprising. It's really quick operations done like a week, a couple of strategic bombs here and there.
I mean, a week's a bit rough.
Well, whatever, right? And everything's back to normal, right? That's the only scenario where this approach, this suite of tactics, like, could have been a good call, right? And everything else you've just mentioned, like, sure, like you might say in isolation, this one thing, they've like, all right, we've degraded certain capabilities by X% or whatever. But like, what about the second, third, fourth round implications of this, right? Like, what about the stability of that region? Like, what about the Gulf states who have an incredible amount to lose from this, right? So it's completely disrupted the equilibrium. And if you can't completely destroy Iran, do you think that they're not going to rebuild and restore? Like, of course they are, and they're going to be even more assertive, right? And that's why now, like, the Gulf states are saying, like, you got to finish the job because you can't leave this fucking mess on our doorstep. And it is a fucking mess on their doorstep. And the problem is they're not going to have the resolve to see it through. So it's just creating this massive, like, hot mess in this region. Petrol prices, fuel prices now, like, you could argue on one level, oh, well, that's a very selfish way of looking at it. Well, not really, because this is the own goal we're talking about. Again, if you're Israel, it might be a different story. But if you're an average voter in the US, and certainly if you're, in countries like Australia and the rest of the world, this is like a complete disaster.
No, man, I don't agree on that. Well, I'd like to think that people have a bit more resolve than that. and to kind of understand the trade-off that's happening. And also, if anything, the Gulf states have shown greater support for the action than what was anticipated. Is bonded them together against Iran. Like, look at what's actually happening, right? When's the last time you've had all of the Gulf states, and even people like Qatar and others that have been playing both sides for a long time, supporting the action? And you might say, "Oh, that's because they have to now," and all this.
Well, they're getting bombed. They're getting. It's us.
There you go. They're getting. Can you say that again? They're getting bombed.
Yeah, but
by
like, that's...
Iran. Do you understand do you understand what's happening here, mate? Rolling the dice on Iran. Those odds are pretty good that you're going to get something better than what was there.
I don't know. That's true. I don't think that's true.
Kill 30,000 of your own citizens?
I think you can mount like a humanitarian case, but again, I think you've got to come back to if your goal, like you can have a goal to trigger regime change to change the situation. Any number of, you can have those objectives, but it's certainly not the best way to achieve this.
I didn't hear any kind of suggestion of what would be a better way. Bringing into the fold of nations?
I think history shows that you can't force regime change from without, right? It has to become from within. And every time America's tried to do that, it's completely failed, right? Even Venezuela.
Would it be possible to
get the man, but not the regime, right?
Yeah, but if you cut the head off,
and how's it going to work? Are they going to put boots on the ground to do that? No, they're not. They're not going to have the resolve to do that. And if Donald Trump puts his however many, that he's got circling the region at the moment on the ground, yeah, sure, but for how long? Like, what, another, like the movement of MAGA that's like completely opposed to forever wars? Like, is this are they going to, like, is this actually what you as that middle of the road American voter wants? I don't think so. So
I think there'd be a large cohort of people that understand that if there's 30,000 people that have their own citizens that have been mowed down, protesting a theocracy like this that's been putting them under the boot for this long and taking away rights and pushing them backwards. And if the president says help's on the way, that actually you owe it to do that. Right. So I think that's also an angle here that you can't forget that people, everyone have asked for help.
So just to like tease this out a bit, right? So I think if you said to me that like, hey, like a quick, easy kind of low-hanging fruit, get them while they're a little bit weak. There's a popular uprising as it is. They're already a little bit depleted. Let's get them while we have this window of time now. Let's go in, go hard, go sharp, go quickly. And even if it's not regime change, even if it's some version of just like, look, we'll just, debilitate them somehow, right? Like that is a calculus you can genuinely like have a conversation about, right? You can't bring a ideological, I'm against all kinds of wars, like against to that, right? Or I'm against Donald Trump in every scenario. So like, I'm just not going to support that. So if that's kind of where you're coming from, I don't disagree with that, right? But I think if even Donald Trump knew where we would be today before he pushed the button, if he knew that we would be where we are right now, there's no way he would have pushed the button.
No, that's not true. That's not true. You're not taking any of the accounts of actual real threat as well, right? Like, okay, maybe we should start a bit further back. Do you believe that it is a reasonable goal to prevent Iran from achieving a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, but that's not. Let's start
where, there. Do you think that that's credible? Because not everyone does.
Yeah, of course. And look, I think one of the problems in this space, right, is, for one, there's a lot of different things going on, right? Like, there's not a lot of, like, clarity, right? But I've just asked our friend ChatGPT a question, right? Because I think one of the problems in this space is, like, to really have good instincts about where this war sits at and like the progress, whether it was a good call, not a good call, whatever, you actually kind of need to know a lot of shit about a lot of different things, right? And there would be people who would spend their entire career life focusing on this question and still would not be sure, right?
Yeah.
So I asked our good friend, what do strategic analysts say about the war in terms of its success and whether it was a good call, right? Tell me if there's anything in this statement that
hit me.
You disagree with. A pretty fair read of current commentary is that analysts are split into a few camps. Some think the war was a defensible call if the real objective was to heavily degrade Iran's missile, drone, naval, and nuclear capabilities, because there is evidence those capabilities have been damaged, and even ratings agencies like Fitch are describing the operations as having reduced security threats. Others think that even if there were tactical gains, the war is veering towards strategic failure because Iran remains able to retaliate, the US lacks a clear exit strategy, and the conflict may end up strengthening hardliners rather than producing a stable end state. So, in some respects, that's a pretty, almost a near enough representation of the conversation we just had.
Yeah, well, I think I neatly, and I think I paraphrased my view to this is just the military side, right, and degradement. So I agree with that.
But can I just pin you on the one thing? Do you think this has gone better or worse than Donald Trump would have anticipated before pressing the button? Because I can't believe you would say that he would think it's gone better, or even on par.
So if I channel Donald Trump, I think that the military side has gone how he's wanted, like obliteration and destruction and all that. I think that where it hasn't gone, and he's been surprised, is that they're still limping on, right? And they're not coming to the table to either surrender or make a deal. So in that respect,
don't you think they're related though in some respects? Because the way I would see that equation is that because the military side, or like the actual, like, okay, in terms of like, did we get the targets? Did we, that we went after? Sure, but actually, like, Donald Trump wouldn't have got into the room saying, I want you to get that, I want you to get that, I want you to get that. He would have got in, I just want you to, like, fuck them over until they come and meet me and I can, like, extract all the stuff that I want out of them, right? That's what he would have gone into the room with, right?
Yeah, and look, to some degree, that has or is starting to happen. Now, what is not, I think what has been a huge, maybe, miscalculation is just how far the asymmetry reaches when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, and how cheaply they can disrupt the security clearance or the security areas of other neighboring states. So what I mean by that is that from what it sounds like, some dude in a dinghy with like a rocket launcher can still fuck over the Strait of Hormuz, right?
But see, this is not like where this is, and we haven't even really gone into the incompetence of Donald Trump and his administration, but this is no different to the Pyongyang can get Seoul with or without nuclear weapons, right? And that shouldn't require any great foresight to have
but
worked out where we were going to be mere weeks after.
It's neither the whole picture though, right? Like all the whole game, So all I'm saying is, yeah, I think that was probably could have been better prepared for, right, and communicated and so on. But that's just not Trump's style, right? And I guess it's probably the difference between someone who believes that they can bully their way into a deal of some sort and dealing with proper theocrats, proper like hardliners, right? Like, and dealing with jihadis and all these kind of things. And it's probably that plays into this, right? That actually, you can cut the head off the snake, but sometimes there's two little baby snake heads that pop out, right? And can you deal with that or not? Obviously Israel understands that a lot better than probably Trump does, right?
All right, so I want to do two more things. I want to, first of all, get you to outline because I think you started off with your pro case, so I want to give you a chance to give your con case, because you triggered me with your pro case. And then I want to react to a message you sent me a week or two ago and come back to that and see what, because I think you got triggered by it. So let's get the now that I've had a moment to calm down, give me your warm my heart up with some con cases.
Yeah, and this has all sorts of mirror imaging then, or alignment with the Israel and Gaza problem, right? Where a similar thing, you can absolutely dominate an asymmetric war, and from a military point of view, you can crush them, absolutely crush them, right? And expose them. No air defenses, just flying, loitering around and just taking out targets, taking out individuals. Capability on show is amazing. But if you go further abroad and you look at the strategic priorities of safety in the region, your own brand, your ally network, it's in tatters, right? So obviously, like, it doesn't take a genius to realize that there's real damage to the alliance the post-World War II alliance. That I think that as much as they talk about this axis of evil and all this kind of stuff like that, America are losing their friends, and no one's coming to help. No one's helping. Right? No one's doing anything. NATO is not doing anything. The UK is doing less than nothing, So I think that strategically, the way the system works is through allies and through this kind of, that's why they call it hard and soft influence. And the USA's got plenty of hard influence and hard power. But what about the soft power? And how do you maintain that, right? And what kind of damage is done? Now, part of me says that the system will sweat it out, and that's kind of one of the good parts of democracies, that you change, there's a new boss in town. But another part of me is maybe not so sure. So I think you can step back and say, hey, there's a lot of own goals there. And then if you go a little bit outside of that and actually think about just the general global economy, then it's back to your points that, hey, if you take out the moral aspects of what you should be doing or how you should be helping the Iranian people, and you put all that to aside, then yeah, people are going to be poorer. There's going to be more conflict. And as a result, what's that stat? Whenever the GDP goes down a percentage point, 100,000 people die, right? For various reasons around, poverty and other things like that, and conflict and there's a bunch of things that could happen. So yeah, that's all. That's all at play as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with all of that. But again, I can't. For me, the critical question is if Donald Trump knew this is where we would be, taking into account all of the above, not just the did the military operation land in the targets, but the broader, whether it's that they've got this rusted on group of people in control in Iran that not are going to. To your point, the dinghy can hold a oil tanker and the global liquid petroleum market to
That's kind of a reason to do something as well, though.
Yeah, but, one of the things from the Iraq War, right, I think you could have learnt is that sometimes stability in whatever form it happens to be in is better than instability. And
or just pushes the problem down the road.
Well, not necessarily. I can see the case for some sort of, action, but for whatever that action was going to be, and that's for people more acquainted with the situation and the various levers that could be pulled and all of that than me. But I think there's no way that the man you want in control of that is Donald Trump.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And you would want to do it with allies, and you would want to do it methodically, and you would want to have a calculated. It would have to be a calculated risk. I don't think this has been a calculated risk. This has just been a,
wouldn't you say,
let's have a crack,
But wouldn't you say that about anything, right? There would be a more optimum way to do things, but maybe it can't be done. Maybe the best way is the way that can be done. With the crazy man doing it.
Okay, every year in Australia we have a horse race called the Melbourne Cup. And as antiquated as this sounds to our listeners from other countries, virtually every Australian above the age of 18 and even some school age kids will have a bet of some description on the Melbourne Cup, on a horse race. And you'll have people who don't bet on any other horse race any other time of the year, but for that once a year they'll do that, right? And there's a few ways you can bet on the Melbourne Cup. One is you can pick the horse whose name you think sounds the best, right? Or you've got a lucky number. The other is you could just say, I just have a rule of thumb. I go for the favorite, the second favorite, or something like that, right? But you want to actually if this were a war, you want to be going with the guy who's actually studying the form and has some insight, can actually make sense of all of those numbers in the form guide that tell you all these weird and wonderful things about the horses. Because on average, they're going to be making better decisions than the lucky number pickers and the ones who like funny horse names kind of thing. And I kind of feel like Donald Trump's a funny horse name kind of guy, right? He doesn't think very thoughtfully. He doesn't take advice. He surrounds himself with useful idiots who just tell him that he's great and wonderful. And that's not the recipe for success with something as complex and multifaceted as this. And even just there's the decision to launch in. Okay, yes, that's a binary go, no-go decision. But now there's also really complex tactical decisions that have to be made.
But do you think he
can't make
those?
them? He can't. Well, I think I don't mean tactical in the military sense. I mean tactical in the geopolitical sense. and he's utterly inept to do that.
Well,
and
we're
failing as a result.
We don't know yet. Like, I mean, that's the other thing to say. Like, so if going back to the question,
I don't know.
going back to the question,
I think
you asked me if Trump knew everything that was going to happen, and what are we, week 5, 6? I don't know. If he knew everything was happening, he would never take that. He would never green light it now. And I think that I would agree with that if we are 12 months in, but not 6 weeks in, right? We don't. This is it's a blink of an eye. Like, look at how long these conflicts go for. This is that's a blink of an eye, right?
I think that's where your proposition fails, because I think Donald Trump never thought that this would be longer than a few weeks, right? I think he thought...
He said straight away that it's going to be, like months, not days.
No, he's saying, it'll be over when I think it is, when I feel it in my bones, when, a few more weeks to go. Like this is...
But man, this is not like baking a pie.
I know it's not, but I think he thought it was. I think he thought this was like going to be a little bit like Venezuela, right? And
it could still be. It could be more.
But it's not in so many other ways, because, and maybe again, this is a superficial and first world problem kind of way of thinking about things. But like, already global oil markets are fucked, and they're going to be for some time, like months and months, because even if the Strait is reopened overnight tomorrow, there's already enough that's happened that's going to have tail risk, like all the risks for, like, insurers are not wanting to insure vessels through the Strait. Production's been halted. You've got all these flow-on consequences, right? And I just kind of feel like Donald Trump would not have, because he's so vain, if he knew that his popularity would drop to the kind of record lows they're at now, which I believe he's more unpopular than he's ever been at any other time of his presidency in either era, so he's more unpopular than he has ever been, right? When he came off, like, to be fair...
This is not true, though. Like,
it is, though. It is. His approval rating is lower than it has been at any time since he's ever been president.
You're reading the man wrong, okay? He doesn't care about those polls. What he cares about are the TikToks of Iranian people doing the Trump dance. He cares about the Israelis flying the Trump flag and having a Trump tower in the middle of Tel Aviv.
I think he cares about
that
everything.
Stuff. This is devotion. This is like godlike worship from a select people. He doesn't care about the broad strokes of it.
I think he cares about that, but he cares about the polls too, because he wants...
can't buy that. Like, you know how enticing it is to a man like Trump?
Yeah, but he
TikToks
wants...
of Iranian people doing the Trump dance.
Yeah, but it's the whole stuff he cares about, right? He cares about everyone loving him.
He just writes the other people off as idiots.
Yeah,
this is how the kind of pathology works.
But it's different when you win the election, and there are fewer idiots than people who voted for me. But it turns out, like, the idiots that voted for him are now in a minority, right? So I kind of think that's
and it's all how it ends, right?
That's all part of it. And all right, let's move on to something you were triggered by, I think.
Could be anything in these last weeks.
So there's a series of headlines. And to be fair, I don't know the date. Actually, I can try and find the date. You sent it to me on the 14th of March, so it's a little bit out of date now in terms of the headlines. But I'm just going to read, just for our listeners, the headlines, because it was a screenshot that you kind of reacted to and well, I'll let you can speak in your own words how it made you feel. But this is like an ABC News screenshot, and the headlines are: opponents of Iran's regime worry 2 weeks of bombing has backfired. Trump says war in Iran will be over when I feel it in my bones. The US is no longer directing the war against Iran. So I'll just pick those 3 headlines. There's a few others in there. And then I guess your comment to me was, the ABC headlines, so balanced it's shocking. And then I think I kind of said, well, come on, this war is a bit of a clusterfuck. Balance doesn't mean that you have to have some articles saying it's a great war. Balance is calling it how it is. I'm not sure what the balance we had to find was.
Well, look, it wasn't an isolated thing. I was just seeing the headlines. There's not one thing as a counterbalance to the achievements or the positive nature, or why perhaps that this is in pursuit of liberation of the Iranian people, right? Or even, I mean, we've totally forgotten about the Israelis as well, right? They literally have Iron Dome shooting these missiles down by proxies or Iran like constantly. So there's a lot of things that I think that aren't giving the Australian people a balanced view of what's going on, and as a result, things get very warped, and the zeitgeist is 100% to get mixed up to things. And I think that a good mental exercise would be, if the Obama presidency was doing exactly the same thing. Say the JCPOA broke down and they had to go in and intervene and similar things, they'd be going, oh man, how are they doing this without civilian casualties? And they're anyway. So, you know what? It's triggering to me in the same way that I felt about some of the Free Palestine stuff. That I just think that sometimes this is exactly what the terrorists want, right? This is exactly what the jihadis want. It's part of their strategy in an asymmetric war to lower support for intervention using media and propaganda and trying to leverage community reactions to degrade support for any kind of intervention. And it feels like, we are playing into their game from all these angles. And that's what just really gets me, right, when it comes to this stuff, that people have forgotten,
Don't you
this
think
is their
that's
strategy.
I think that's a little bit offensive in some respects. So, like, it's kind of like to kind of play up that string of headlines to being like the ABC falling for some kind of jihadist propaganda. I think it's legitimate reporting on the actual things that are going on, and like
they're opinion headlines.
I'm not going to argue that there's not like views expressed in those headlines, because there are, but like
is the US no longer directing the war against Iran after they've killed the Ayatollah and the I mean, come on.
But I think
success for Iran. This war has been a great success for Iran.
Okay, you'd have to click the link and actually read the article, but let's just limit ourselves to analysing the headline, right? And I've got no idea what the actual article says. US is no longer directing the war against Iran. The point of that heading is to say that they've lost control of the situation, which they have, because Iran is not bending the knee to the United States. So they thought they would.
Pause there, Andy. Bending the knee. The United States is bending the knee, you said.
No. Iran is not bending the knee to the United States.
It's a war. It's 2 weeks.
But like the whole presumption, I believe, was that this would be over very quickly, and that's the whole premise of this thing. This is, and we haven't even talked about how Donald Trump is the party of no more forever wars, no more foreign. Like, he was literally elected on a platform of no more wars, right? And this idea that we're 2 weeks in and nothing, this is the context of an article like this. This is a guy who did not want to commit America to more wars, right? And you can say, well, it's only 2 weeks in, but any war, when you say, it's, ask me in 12 months' time, like the fact that you're committing to a war that would last 12 months is like precisely against the whole spirit of what many people in the United States elected him for, right? So I think that's the context. I think that's relevant as well, right?
Do you think, though, that having all of those headlines without any balancing headlines to the other side of the equation, which was really mainly my point, that if you picked up the ABC and you scroll through all the headlines, yes, you can make an argument that this is, opinion and there's a certain angle on it, but it's all, there's all legit journalism. But where's the other side?
I'm going to say something, but I don't want you to react to it in a...
All right, I won't hang off every word. Just say it.
Hear me out, right? I don't think Donald Trump has earned the other side, right? Because to have earned the other side, I think you have to have explained to, not to us as Australians, but at least his own people, what they're trying to do, bring him and his allies like along the journey, and give a sense that, hey, we do have a clear sense of purpose of what we're trying to do, such that the focus isn't on him and what the fuck is he doing, what the fuck are we doing, what the fuck's going on here, and it's actually, okay, I get it now. We're going to have a shared, like, unified vision or mission against the enemy, which is Iran, right? And you're right. The enemy should be Iran. We should be viewing Iran as the enemy. But you can't do something like this, not explain it, and expect commentators to clean up your mess. You've got to set the narrative. You've got to give clear reasons why, and that work hasn't been done. And that's why I think you can't. He hasn't earned it. The administration has not earned the right to balance because they're not making the case for themselves.
I get it, but I think the argument is flawed because it's not about like earning the right. It's about the national broadcaster trying to help Australians and the community make sense of it, right? Something that is a little bit more to the tune of right war, wrong people, wrong people running it or something like that, right? Like some kind of view to help provide a bit more clarity instead of reading this and going, oh man, we should not have done this, right? Like this is just, everything's fucking up and I don't understand why and all this. Like, don't you think that should fall into the remit of a public broadcaster? Because what you just said around Iran should be the enemy, 100% public disagree on that.
I don't think there's a lot of sympathy for Iran, just to be clear. I think that people see Iran a little bit like North Korea, right? So if there was like some sort of an attack on North Korea from Donald Trump, I think people would rightfully go, why the fuck did you do that? Like, why the fuck did you open that? Like, this is like the piece of shit in a plastic bag sitting on your doorstep that, for better or worse, it's better just leaving in the plastic bag, right? And if some dickhead comes along, opens the plastic bag and smears the shit everywhere, yeah, it's the shit is the thing that we're rightfully like, aggrieved about, but it's the person who opened the plastic bag, who has agency, who made a bad decision that we're focusing our attention on. So I don't think anyone's under any illusions that Iran is this...
They are, mate, they are.
Well, I disagree. I don't think so.
The sympathies run deep. They see Iran as Palestine, my friend.
No, I don't think that's... I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. I think that's
the
quite
media
wrong,
has
actually.
helped in that confusion.
I don't think that's right. I think that's actually quite wrong and quite... I think that misses the mark for me. Like, I don't see that as the case. I think, I completely disagree with that. I think there's probably some young, confused people who don't know the difference. But I think anyone with half a brain, half an education knows there's a difference between what's going on here and Israel-Palestine. I want to ask you a question now, because I think that even that framing that you've just thrown in is quite telling, actually. So you would be quite upfront. I think you're quite invested in the Israel-Palestine thing, right? I think you would probably agree that you've got reasonably strong views, right, about it. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone that you're pro-Israel in the context of, since October 7, right? So,
as you are too,
with limits, right? And I think there's lines that have been crossed that maybe have or haven't been crossed for you. I don't know. But, okay, so then I think you see this very much within that context, right? I think you see what's happening now, and I think you've even said this line before, like almost like the next chapter, right? Another chapter in the
like the third act.
Yep. So I don't see it that way. I see it quite independently. I see it as this is a different movie we're watching, right? And so I think that's where we might have some different kind of coming from a slightly different perspective.
So explain to me why you think they aren't related.
Because they're just different orders of magnitude in scale, right? So it's not that they're not related. It's that going after terrorists in Gaza is quite different to opening up a front with, a country that can like grab us by the balls and squeeze them pretty hard, right? So they're quite different things, right?
They wouldn't do that. That's haram.
No. So I guess my question, just to cut to the chase, is do you think seeing it in that way, right, as the third act or whatever, do you think that clouds your judgment or aids your judgment?
Was blind, but now I see. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they are almost 100% funded by Iran. They are Iran. This whole thing is linked. How can it not be? They're fighting the war that's been going on, the conflict that's been going on. The Gazans and the Palestinians are caught in the middle of this gigantic proxy war that is happening, and not just between Israel, but between a lot of the Gulf states and a lot of the Western powers, and on a global stage with China and all these other players. It's the same thing. So if you're asking me, does my knowledge of that cloud my judgment versus assist? I'm going to go with the latter.
Well, it's not just knowledge, though. It's like, I feel like it's hard to take off your, and I'm not saying you're necessarily like Team Israel in some, like you're barracking for a sports team, but like it's a perspective, right? It's a little bit like the the thing about where like, do you want to be an organ donor? And it's like you opt in or you opt out, right? And if you have to opt in, then you're less likely to be an organ donor than if you have to opt out, right? And I kind of feel like at the margin, so I'm not necessarily making a claim of like it completely sways thinking on this, right? But if you view it as like the third chapter or the third act or whatever, then your starting point is it has to be a consistent story with the first and second acts, right? Which means that, okay, in the first act, this is my view. Second act, this is my view. Third act, like I'm going to have to have a slightly different view or a different view. I also have to be convinced of some flaw in my understanding of the first and second acts. Whereas, like I said, for me, like I understand what you've just spoken about and the relationships, but I don't see it necessarily, like I see it distinctly, right? And I think it's quite possible to have all of the views that you might have about Israel and, the stuff that happened, in Gaza and all that sort of stuff, whilst coming to a completely different view on this one.
Yeah, then that's cool. And look, I'm happy to kind of put on the table my thoughts around the greater narrative and how these are all connected. But again, I think that allows you to see reason. But if you're saying that makes you just hardens you up against the possibility for other theories, then I actually want to hear the theories. Like I want to understand what they are so I can judge them, right? Like, so if there is something that has been obfuscated or clouded by this, I'm up for that discussion. But these ABC headlines don't say that. They just talk about the incompetence of Trump, which I will put my hat in the ring and agree with that. And you'd rather someone else that's more experienced doing this with a bit more candor and a bit more communication skills. But nothing's brought to me on the other side of substance around trying to create some clarity for the Australian people that actually there are elements of this intervention that are important and that actually you're not going to get any peace in the Middle East without dealing with this problem.
I think, though, where perhaps your sense around this, and this is what I would probably say that I would probably observe is from a couple of things you've said, is I do think, and this is just my view, I'm not necessarily trying to convince you otherwise, but like I get the sense like your instincts around things like the public's attitude towards Iran, because you see this as there's a continuity between this and Israel, Palestine, that you kind of, and it's so easy to like typecast people who are opposed to Trump for this war are the same kind of people who would be out there like free Palestine from the river to the sea, that kind of thing, right? And no doubt there's like overlap and all that stuff, but I think the mainstream Australia aren't like that. Like I think mainstream Australia are like me, who think that this is like a total cock up and like could have gone well, and if it had gone well, we'd be saying, oh, okay, actually that was, but this was the roll of the dice that like he had to roll a 1 or a 2, but 3, 4, 5, and 6 look pretty shit. So we probably shouldn't have rolled the dice in the first place, right? And it's got nothing to do with your attitudes towards Israel or Palestine. It's just it's a different conflict. It's a different set of circumstances. And just to give you, I think, something you've sort of sought or put forward of like, well, what's the other side for like, what do? We just do nothing kind of thing, or let it, how do we deal with this thing? And like, I think that's hard to answer, but I don't think we had any great urgency. Like, I don't think we had any, like, there was no imminent threat. Like, it wasn't like we have to do this right now or else. This wasn't like, you sometimes buying yourself more time is the best thing you could do, right? So whatever that looked like in practice, we're pretty dialed in. I mean, you've probably done a little bit more of research or reading or whatever you've done on this than I have to understand it. But I'm pretty dialed in, but I don't really understand why it had to be done this way, right? So if I don't get it, the guy who's just paid like $300 to fill up his, mega truck or whatever they have in America certainly isn't going to understand it.
Yeah,
I think that's a big problem.
Look, I agree with that, right? And I guess I just see this more outside. It crosses the boundaries of economic impact and political impact for me, right? Like there are other elements going on here. There is a bit of a battle of ideologies that I guess in the end of the day, that's what I'm more invested in. I really do not want to see the, like the jihadis and the kind of relativism that forms around it to support the manipulation of our population. And you can say, you find that offensive, but I feel like the infiltration is already there. And I just hate seeing it. It really triggers me, and I guess I would just say that when you traverse those things, I think that the other main factor at play here is that people they hate Trump so much that they just can't stand, that they are unable to see the forest from the trees, so to speak, around what could be the right cause but the wrong person doing it.
But like this religious thing, right? Like now there's obviously, religious extremism and, like kind of the jihadi sort of stuff. And I'm probably closer to you that's an issue that's kind of not given its dues. Like I am probably like on the same page with you on that. But I actually don't think the Iranian regime is that. I think they certainly were a religious like revolution, like its roots are religious, right? But I think over time and over the decades, I don't think that's where the religious extremists sort of come from, right? I think like the Iranian regime is really like they're like any other power hungry.
You just see them like the CCP, right? Their goal is to survive, not anything more.
The fact that the regime hasn't collapsed is testament to what they've got going there, right? Which is it's this quite complex and sophisticated and robust political system where there's people who get what they need from the regime. They've got all of the right people with influence and power like tied up. It's a very solid, stable, like it's politically stable, right? And I think that's where the success is. And in some ways, I think if it was purely religious and the whole like thing of like committing to religious ideology is more just that like loyalty test or whatever. But it's actually not I don't think the people involved in the regime are, I mean, the Ayatollah, who was, what was his name? Khomeini. He was...
Khomeini.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to try that. He wasn't even a complete cleric, right? They had to, I don't know, I don't know what the words are, but didn't he have to, before he assumed that post, he was just the president, right?
I get where you're going with this, Andy, but so, I really wouldn't place my bets on the fact that Iran are like less theocratic than you would like.
No, but I'm just trying to say, like, I think they're opposed to regime change because regime change mean that people who are enriched by the regime cease to be enriched. Like, I think that's the primary reason why they stick pretty solid together and remain stable. It's not because of religious fanaticism that, like, you don't find, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on this, but you don't find many Iranians who blow themselves up as suicide bombers, right? It's not like, I feel like they weaponize religion rather than religion weaponizes them.
Is your theory that the terror proxies have no so they're different from the terror proxies, so they just hire the jihadi thugs, but they have nothing to do with them? Is that kind of your proposition?
No, I have no doubt that they're pulling strings and making it all happen. So yeah, like I'm not arguing that, but it's not the Iranians who are blowing themselves up. It's their funding and they're providing.
The pawns die first in chess, right? Like but you're trying to say though that say Hamas, real jihadis, or Hezbollah and the Houthis and stuff, you're saying that they don't carry that same jihadi flavor into the Iranian theocracy?
I'm saying that the Iranian regime, the power structures in Iran, I'm not sure are religious fanaticists in the way that they could be portrayed because they're presented as theocratic. Like I said, they weaponize religion, not the other way around. It's the religion doesn't weaponize them. So I think what does that impact? Well, I think it's just, it doesn't for me feed into the same kind of, like, how you were saying, like, jihadism is like a real problem and it's quite, and I actually agree with that, but I don't think that's where the problem lies, right? I think it's easy to, like, you could say that's where the problem lies because this is the state that's funding it, right? And I made a comment, I don't know if it made it to broadcast, but I made a comment that, like, in a way, like, the people of Tehran that were, I think having pro-regime or, like, mourning the death of the Ayatollah or whatever, that they reminded me, like, Romans, like, in the Vatican, right? Like, it had that vibe to it. It wasn't like...
performative.
Yeah, and it didn't seem... It almost seemed not like, well, maybe almost normal, right? I had this sort of moment of like, I can have an anchor point to understand this regime in a way that maybe I wouldn't previously. This isn't like an Osama bin Laden kind of situation, right? This is their primary interests.
Well, he was a Sunni and they're Shias, so...
Well, but maybe the key point, though, is that if people care about themselves and their regime, it gives you something to work with, right? Because you're negotiating with people who value life, who value material things, who value their status and authority, right? And the problem with jihadism is you can't negotiate with those people. And I know Sam Harris has this line around, well, it's, you know, we can't give jihadis like nuclear weapons. And like, of course, no one wants Iran to have nuclear weapons, but I don't think it's quite that.
Yeah. No, I follow suit on that thinking. I just think it leads to, unfortunately, a similar outcome. So even if you were to say that Sam Harris' thing, okay, well, say Iran does have a nuclear weapon, they're not actually jihadis, right? They just employ them. So it's still, the calculus of threat is still very similar, unfortunately, because they will use that where they need to, right? And yes, I totally understand the whole thing about the negotiation. I mean, we'll see that. I think that they will negotiate in some way with the USA, right? They have to, and I think they will. But I mean, going back to it, I just kind of, I think that when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's very, very the shifting sands of what you can and can't say and where the support happens in a wave, right? I remember it was a Q&A probably maybe a week after the whole October the 7th thing happened years ago now. And one of the prominent politicians that were on the panel were pretty much just got up and said, hey, look, when push comes to shove, you've got to throw your support behind Israel. They're the only democracy in the area. All these other players and governments, they repress their people. Israel's our guy. They're the only democracy there. Think about saying that now. Think about any mainline politician getting up in Q&A and saying that now. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but it's still true, right? And I think that you just, it's tough with this situation. There's something unique about this part of the world, this conflict that just inflames the passions of people to a degree that is beyond what, in accordance with what they know of the world, what they understand. You know, I'd throw my own emotional reaction, not what I'm saying on the pod in regards to this, but there is something about this, right? And it's very, very hard to escape the vortex of.
So one more question for you is, now I think you're a bit more open-minded about the merits, the strategic merit of this than maybe I am. But
that's your conservative route showing, I think. The status quo and the equilibrium, no matter how dysfunctional, is still better than wide-scale turbulence.
Unless you have confidence that your turbulence is going to get you to your destination, but if you can't have confidence that your plane's not going to crash on the journey, I think that's probably my position. But you've also you've listed out a whole bunch of like things that have not gone to plan, whether it's in the second, third order kind of impacts, but like in a sort of scale of 0 to 10, where like 5 is neutral, 10 is really support, 0 is completely oppose, 5's in the middle, like whether it's support or oppose, I don't know, but you know what I mean. It's that. Do you think it was the right call, or do you think it was the wrong call? Where are you with 5 being bang in the middle, neutral?
If I base it on the Iranian people,
don't even base it on that. Like, just base it on whatever. The whole of things that you care about, not any particular narrow factor.
The pause is factoring the some of the ugly path, but I would say a 7.
As in supporting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. The reason I wanted to ask you that isn't to get into a debate over whether it should be 4, 3, or 7, or 6, or 5, but more to then frame up my next little piece of the puzzle, which is like Donald Trump. Because I think to the rest of the world, and you've touched on this is just seen as like, this is like another clusterfuck from Donald Trump. And this is just another chapter in like, what the fuck, what are we living with right now, right? With him in office, right? And now if you see this as a 7, And you might you could potentially hold the two as like true at the same time. You could possibly say it's a clusterfuck, like Donald Trump is shit and it's a clusterfuck from him because if they had have done A, B, C, D, F, G differently and he had have made slightly different calls, it could have been an 8, 9 or a 10, whereas you're at a 7 with the difference being Donald Trump's incompetence. So doesn't rule you out, but it makes you, given probably there's a reasonable chance that any other president wouldn't have pulled the trigger at all, that you could be seeing this as like a good thing, like in his favor, right? But I think, like, do you think, because I would say this has to seal the deal, like if there's anyone in any doubt, and I know that he's still got this base of support, and there's going to be like a bunch of morons like who, for whatever reason, just can't see another way when it comes to Trump, right? They just can't see him for what he is. Or they love that he's just like, they're so disengaged from the real world or disengaged from what the alternative is that they almost don't give a fuck. And they're happy to like piss all over everyone else in a kind of, it almost makes them feel good kind of way. So they like Trump because he's like fucking everything up for everyone else. Like almost they kind of enjoy that aspect, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that going to be that cohort, and that might be a third of the population in America. It could be as high as that, but it's the Joe Rogans. It's the kind of like the anti-woke kind of right wing kind of leaning, but not necessarily because they like Trump, but just because they're a bit more kind of conservative or whatever. Maybe they don't like the Democrats, they don't like woke stuff, all that sort of stuff, but they're not pro-Trump necessarily.
Yeah.
That cohort surely now must like have real like wake up to themselves about this guy, right?
I'll probably go back to the point you raised where the average punter is uninformed, doesn't think deeply about these things, self-motivated, self-interested, and all that really matters is how it ends. So whether the intervention or the war was good or not, it's whether we get a good deal out of the end of it, right? So do they walk away with seize control of the oil islands and the strait and a new regime that answers the call when Trump, rings? Or does it go horribly? Do we have a protracted, conflict and no one can go to Abu Dhabi anymore and no one can go to Dubai and drive around in their Lamborghinis?
Do you think there's that many Americans in like the Midwest that are going to be like, shit, I can't go to Abu Dhabi anymore?
Well, yeah, then the oil may be more. Anyway, any machination of that, right? But some of those MAGA people probably, like the moment Trump, I don't even know if it was it the US or Israel, assassinated the Ayatollah. Maybe that's enough for them already. It's like, our president fucked yours up. Anyway, all I'm saying is I think that it'll just depend how it ends. People like winning, right? Or the perception of winning. So whether they believe they have won or not is the real test of this. If they walk, that's why, as reprehensible as Venezuela was, people like it because they won.
So do you think by the midterms there will be a clear winner?
No. And he's going to get fucked in the midterms. But like I said, in terms of legacy, it just depends on whether they get there, right? And that's not, everyone should be hoping for, not a situation where America just wins despite the rest of the world's interests, but everyone should be hoping that now that we're in this, that we can get some good outcomes, right? And I don't think people are. Like, I think people are so clouded by the hatred of Trump that they're like, they're hoping this thing's going to fail.
But they're not, okay, can we just take out the word, like the framing that they're clouded by their view on Trump? Like, they're actually not clouded by that. Like,
if you're hoping this will fail because you want to rub it in his face, then you're clouded.
They see extremely clearly when it comes to Trump, right? They're not clouded at all.
You're confused, Andy. That's all you are, confused.
Not cloudy or confused. They see Trump for what he is and with absolute 20/20 vision, right? And it's
okay to hate him. It's okay. Like, I understand. Like, we're all human, right? Like, you can hate him. You can hate him with such a deep, white, hot rage that you want him to fail.
No one hates Donald Trump but wants to pay $20 a litre for petrol. So the two aren't, and I'm using obviously that as the proxy for the outcome of the war. So no one is going to...
Don't all the libs have EVs now anyway that they can't charge because they can't keep the grid on?
Well, I think the key thing is, I don't think many people who see Donald Trump for what he is are like thinking, oh yes, the Iranians, like they're not like collapsing yet. Like, I think my views are pretty typical, right? My views are, what a motherfucking moron in the White House, tick. But fuck, I hope if they're going to do this thing, I hope this regime like collapses pretty quickly or negotiates whatever, like comes to the table pretty damn quickly, because I don't want this anymore, right? And to be fair, I'm not actually worried about, like, we talk about petrol and all that kind of stuff. I drive a Toyota Corolla to work like 2 kilometers, right? I'm not impacted by the fuel prices. I've filled up once since this war began, and I still have half a tank of petrol, right? I'm not impacted by this fuel situation, right? But we haven't even started to feel the impacts that are going to come through, like supply chains collapsing, through like plastics, fertilizers, like all of that stuff's yet to flow through. Yeah. And it's probably not clear yet to people just how bad this is going to get. And I think if people look at the price of petrol and they go, oh, well, I prefer to pay $1.80 a litre, but, if it's $2.80, an extra $1 a litre, well, I'll just suck it up for a little while and it'll get better and, we'll get over it, right? That's not what we're going to be experiencing over the next few months. It's going to get, the price of everything is going to go up. Things are going to be unavailable on the shelves. Things you're used to buying. There's certain products which are going to double or triple in price. Not everything, but some things are. And this is going to be bad, and we've got to like strap ourselves in.
Did you say strap on?
Well, not with the petrochemical markets impacting the availability of plastics, soft plastics.
Andy, look, I'm not accusing you, and I know I'm not accusing you of being clouded, but my premise was that if you hate the situation so much with Trump, that you, in your heart of hearts, you kind of are hoping it's a big failure because you hate Trump so much.
I don't think
then that's what I mean.
No, but I don't think that's... Yeah, I don't think there are many people who actually think that way. Like, I think, a lot of people would... It's implicit in the comment I made earlier where most presidents would not have done this, right? Like, most presidents didn't... Well, in fact, no other president has done this. America's had, 50 years to do this, 40 years, 50 years to do something like that. And none of them have done it, right? And I think that reflects the strategic calculus that actually exists today still. So I kind of think that, like, it's a bit like it was never a good... This was never a good bet to make.
Well, I think there was some urgency. That's the problem.
Well, that would be something that would be good to have explained to people, because no one has done that.
But little Marco has tried to.
They just echo the line, right? They don't... It's not really...
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to know. Look, I want to believe... I actually do want to believe your characterization of it all. But I've come across real people, Andy. Like, it's not just bots on Facebook posts and stuff and YouTube videos. I think, you see them. We got our fucking Australian of the Year shouting "globalize the intifada," Like,
yeah, but she's not representative, right? She is like a product of the extreme left, right? And I think that...
I'm just saying they walk among us. They're not... The way that you're just kind of portraying this really even keel... None of the things that we're seeing, like, I don't know.
Yeah, but it can't be what you see on a university campus or on YouTube, like at the extremes of YouTube. Like, it has to be, what do everyday people in the office think about it? What does the average person on the train carriage you're sitting in have to think about it? And those people are not Grace Tame. You know what I mean?
It goes to my point about maybe the strategic failings of this, that no one can deny that when it comes to the rates of how blatant kind of anti-Zionist support there is right now, it's just like, it's gone through the roof. And maybe that's the strategic failure of losing the PR war and the actual actions that have been taken.
Yeah, but I don't think Israel did itself any favors, right?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Like, it's yeah.
And to be clear, it's not just all PR. That's why I say it's actions as well. It's not PR, just PR spin.
So I'm gonna take a moment to, like, I was having a look at the stats, the listener stats for the middle, and I saw that 3 out of 4 of our listeners are actually from the United States. So I'm going to have like a moment to speak to those in America, because this is probably an angle that you probably don't hear that much about, but it's like I'm sure in America you hear the American angle, right? But maybe not like some of the other shenanigans going on. Like, you have Donald Trump saying, like, making pretty outrageous kind of comments about how like countries like Australia aren't doing anything to help them, when literally like we've not even been asked to do, like they said, oh, we asked Australia to help. Like they literally haven't. It's like it just complete ridiculous made up statements. And
you should anticipate my needs.
and like and also, you know, the whole NATO thing, like, oh yeah, we like America's going to go it alone on this thing with Israel on this thing, and then like complain to NATO after the fact for not, like, what the fuck, like, what?
Well, he asked
to
for
like
some
clean up their
minesweepers,
mess,
mate.
like clean up their mess. You know, it's, I don't know. I just think this whole thing's
Get your own oil.
Yeah,
Get your own oil.
Quite outrageous. Like, let's fuck up the global oil supply chain. Let's fuck it up royally, and then, like, you know, and then complain afterwards because you're not going to help us clean. You know, like, yeah, I don't know. It's really quite ridiculous.
But again, like, don't you just marvel at the system of democracy? Like, in 4 years, this will all be over.
It won't though, because
or not over, but we'll get a little reset. We'll get a little sidebar.
Yeah, but the reason it's not over though is because you can never trust America ever again. Like
they trust them, Andy. Come on.
Until
they pay the bills.
You can't trust America anymore because
what's NATO going to do without trusting America when they don't do anything anyway?
There's no continuity of 50 years.
Why don't we pull out of AUKUS?
Well, I think we probably genuinely have to entertain, like, we have to plan for the fact that thing's not going to work. Now, we might, similar to NATO, we might have a view that, well, we even as a deterrence mechanism, it's better to have it than, you know, not to have it. But I think we would probably rightfully be saying, well, we need like Plan B and C and D, and we need to be self-sufficient.
Get Macron back on the line.
You know, I think, yeah, anyway.
What do you reckon Kevin Rudd's doing right now? What's he doing now?
Well, my understanding is he wants to be the next Secretary General of the United Nations, so he's mounting his campaign.
You think he just want to retire?
Yeah, relevance deprivation syndrome, I think.
Do you think there's any kind of coincidence that all this kicked off, escalated when porn was blocked?
I don't think they aligned. I don't think the dates aligned.
Pity.
All right, over and out.